The desert wind howled like a wounded animal, whipping sand across the cracked asphalt of Route 17, where the sun dipped low and painted the horizon in blood-red streaks. In the shadow of a rusted gas station pump, a little girl, no older than 8, huddled against the peeling wall, her thin arms wrapped around her knees. Her name was Lily, though no one there knew it yet. Tears carved clean paths through the dust on her cheeks, and her small frame trembled, not just from the chill creeping in with dusk, but from the terror etched into her wide eyes. She'd been wandering for hours, her sneakers worn thin from the endless stretch of highway, ever since the car she'd been in swerved off the road in a blur of shouts and screeching tires. Now, alone, she clutched a frayed stuffed rabbit, its button eyes staring blankly, as if it too understood the fear gnawing at her. Headlights pierced the gathering twilight like accusatory fingers, but they belonged to a lone pickup truck, rumbling to a stop nearby. 2 men climbed out, their silhouettes bulky against the fading light, voices rough and laced with impatience. "Kid, you see anything? That wreck's fresh. Driver's probably still warm." The taller one scanned the horizon, his boot kicking up gravel, while the other lit a cigarette, the flame flickering like a warning. Lily shrank deeper into the shadows, her breath hitching. These weren't rescuers. They were scavengers drawn by the promise of salvage from the twisted metal a mile back. The air smelled of hot rubber and spilled fuel, a metallic tang that made her stomach churn. When the shorter man spotted her, his grin split the dusk like a crack in dry earth. "Well, look what we got here. Lost little lamb. Come on out, sweetie. We'll get you safe." But safety was a lie in their eyes, hungry and shadowed. Lily's heart pounded as the man stepped closer, his shadow swallowing her whole. She pressed back against the wall, whispering to her rabbit, "Please, Mommy." The word hung in the air, fragile as the first stars pricking the sky. That's when the thunder came, not from the clouds but from the earth itself. A low growl built into a roar, vibrating through the ground like the pulse of some ancient beast awakening. Headlights multiplied in the distance, a convoy slicing through the haze. Harleys and choppers, engines snarling in unison, chrome gleaming under the dying sun. 50 strong, they rolled in like a steel storm, dust devils swirling in their wake. At the lead was Ethan, his broad shoulders cutting a figure against the wind, beard streaked with grey from years of hard miles. He wasn't young anymore. Pushing 45, with scars from old wars, both the kind fought overseas and the ones that followed him home. His leather vest bore the faded patch of the Iron Vow Riders, a club forged in the fires of forgotten oaths. The necklace around his neck, a simple silver chain with a locket shaped like a crescent moon, swayed as he killed the engine, the metal warm from his skin. The scavengers froze, cigarettes dropping from slack jaws. Ethan's bike settled with a hiss, and he swung off, his boots crunching gravel as the rest of the crew fanned out behind him, a wall of leather and resolve. "Evening, gentlemen," Ethan said, his voice steady as the desert floor, eyes locking on the men with the quiet intensity of a man who'd stared down worse than opportunists. "Looks like you're a long way from home, and she's not for taking." The taller scavenger puffed up, hand twitching toward his belt. "Mind your business, biker. This ain't your road." But his bravado cracked under the weight of the convoy's stare. 50 pairs of eyes, hardened by loyalty that ran deeper than blood. Ethan's hand rested easy on his handlebars, but the air thickened with unspoken threat. One of his riders, a wiry veteran named Marcus, revved his engine once, the sound echoing like a judgment. The scavengers backed off, muttering curses as they piled into their truck and peeled away, taillights fading into the night. Ethan knelt before Lily, his massive frame folding with surprising gentleness. The scent of leather and engine oil mingled with the sharp bite of desert sage. "Hey there," he murmured, voice roughened by years of wind and silence. "Name's Ethan. You got a name, kid?" She peeked up, clutching her rabbit tighter, her gaze snagging on the locket at his throat. It caught the last ray of sun, flashing like a secret. "Lily," she whispered, then pointed a trembling finger. "What's that?" "The moon. Mommy had one just like it." The world tilted for Ethan in that instant. The locket, given to him years ago by Sophia, his ex-wife, before she vanished into the ether of bad choices and broken promises. She'd slipped it around his neck one rain-soaked night in a motel off this very highway, her fingers lingering as she whispered, "Wear it for luck, Ethan. For us." Then she was gone, leaving only echoes and a void that no road could outrun. He'd kept it as a talisman, a promise to himself to honor what they'd lost, a child they never had, a life unraveled by his own demons from the war. Lily's words hit like a gut punch. He reached up, fingers brushing the silver, and something inside him fractured. Tears welled unbidden, hot and foreign after so long dry-eyed. He sank to one knee, then lower, the gravel biting into his palms as he bowed his head. Sobs racked his frame, silent at first, then breaking free like thunder, long held back. The crew watched in stunned quiet. Their leader, a man of iron vows, crumbling before a child's innocent question. Lily scooted closer, small hand patting his arm awkwardly. "Don't cry, mister. Mommy says moons bring people back." In that moment, amid the cooling desert air and the distant hum of engines idling like patient guardians, Ethan felt the pull of an old promise stirring to life. Sophia, gone these 8 years, her fate a shadow he'd chased in vain. But this girl, with eyes like hers and a locket's echo, was no coincidence. The Iron Vow riders had ridden for justice before. Lost causes, forgotten oaths, but this felt personal, a thread weaving through time. He'd find out what happened to that car, to Lily's mother. He'd keep his word, even to a ghost. As the stars wheeled overhead, the convoy formed a protective circle, engines purring softly. Dawn would bring answers, or at least the road to them. And Ethan, wiping his face with a calloused hand, rose with a resolve that bound them all. For the lost, for the promised, they'd ride until the truth broke free. The gas station's neon flickered on, casting a blue glow over the scene as Lily climbed onto the back of Ethan's bike, her rabbit tucked safe. The crew mounted up, a symphony of zippers and kicks, ready to chase the night. What started as a chance encounter on a forsaken stretch of highway was unraveling into something unbreakable. A vow renewed, a family forged in the fire of unexpected tears. Word count 872. The engines thrummed to life under the star-pricked sky, a chorus of low growls that echoed off the endless dunes like a vow whispered in the dark. Ethan gunned his Harley forward, the vibration rumbling through his bones as Lily clung to his waist, her small arms a fragile anchor against the wind. The locket bounced against his chest with each bump in the road, a cold reminder of the fracture she'd exposed. Behind him, the Iron Vow riders fell into formation, their bikes slicing through the night like silver arrows. 50 souls bound by scars and oaths, headlights carving a path through the blackness. Marcus rode flank, his grizzled face set in quiet vigilance, while the others scanned the horizon for threats that the desert so often hid. Route 17 stretched on, a ribbon of cracked blacktop flanked by Joshua trees, clawing at the moonlit air. The scent of creosote and cooling metal filled Ethan's nostrils, sharp and unforgiving. As memories clawed their way back, Sophia's laugh, once like wind chimes in a storm, now a ghost in his mind. She'd vanished after one too many fights, her taillights fading into a rainy dawn 8 years prior, leaving him with the locket and a hollow ache that no brotherhood could fill. He'd buried it deep, riding harder to outpace the regret, but Lily's question had unearthed it all. The girl's breath was warm against his back, steady now, as if the convoy's rumble had lulled her into uneasy trust. "We're going to find your mommy," he murmured over his shoulder, the words more for himself than her. The promise settled heavy. like the weight of his cut on his shoulders. They reached the wreck site in under 20 minutes, the air still thick with the acrid bite of burnt rubber and twisted steel. The car, a faded blue sedan, lay crumpled against a mesquite thicket, its hood accordioned like paper in a fist. No flames licked the wreckage now, but the ground bore scars. Deep gouges in the sand, shards of glass glinting like fallen stars. Ethan killed his engine first, the silence crashing in like a wave. The crew dismounted in a synchronized hush, boots scuffing earth as they formed a perimeter, flashlights cutting beams through the gloom. Lily slid off, rabbit in hand, her eyes wide but dry, resilience flickering in the shadows of her face. "Stay close, kid," Ethan said, guiding her with a gentle hand on her shoulder. The touch felt foreign, protective instinct stirring from a place long dormant. Marcus approached the driver's side, his beam revealing an empty seat, airbag deployed like a deflated lung. "No one's here," he grunted, voice low to avoid startling her. "Blood on the dash, fresh. Looks like someone walked away or was pulled." The words hung, laced with implication. Ethan knelt by the passenger door, gloved fingers tracing the mangled frame. A woman's purse lay spilled nearby, lipstick tube rolling free, its red casing catching the light. He picked it up, heart thudding as he unzipped the main compartment. Inside, a wallet with faded photos, a set of keys and a crumpled receipt from a diner 2 towns over. No ID that screamed Sophia, but the locket's echo gnawed at him. Too many coincidences on this forsaken stretch. Lily tugged his sleeve, pointing to a glint in the underbrush. "That's Mommy's bracelet," she said softly, voice threading the night. Ethan followed her gaze, pushing aside thorny branches to retrieve a thin silver chain, its clasp broken, a tiny moon charm dangling like a severed promise. His breath caught, identical to the one around his neck, a pair Sophia had worn until the end. He held it up, the metal cool against his palm, and the world narrowed to that fragile link. "Where'd she go, mister? The bad men took her?" Lily's question pierced deeper than any blade, her lower lip quivering as she clutched her rabbit tighter. "Not if we can help it," Ethan replied, pocketing the bracelet. He straightened, signaling to the crew. "Fan out, look for tracks, anything. This wasn't just an accident." The riders moved like shadows, their beams sweeping the sand. One found tire marks veering off toward a dry wash, deeper ruts suggesting a heavier vehicle, perhaps the scavenger's truck or worse. Whispers rippled through the group, rumors of a smuggling ring operating these back roads, preying on the vulnerable vanishing folks who crossed their path. Ethan had heard the tales, families torn apart, debts called in with fists and fear, but he'd always ridden wide of them, honoring the club's code to protect without entangling in the rot. As the search yielded scraps, a child's drawing crumpled in the dirt, a single earring winking from the sand, doubt crept in. What if Sophia was tangled in this? What if Lily was the thread pulling him back to a past he'd sworn to leave buried? He glanced at the girl, her face illuminated by a rider's light, and saw echoes of the life they might have had, innocent eyes, unscarred by the world's cruelties. The war had taken pieces of him, nights in foxholes, the crack of rifles that still echoed in his dreams, but Sophia's absence had carved the deepest wound. Now, this child, adrift like a message in a bottle, demanded he face it. A shout from the edge of the wash broke the tension. "Tracks lead north, toward Blackridge," Marcus called, waving them over. The town was a speck on the map, a haven for outlaws and the overlooked, where corruption festered like an open sore. Ethan's jaw set, resolve hardening like cooling iron. "We ride at first light. Get her somewhere safe tonight." They gathered the evidence in a saddlebag, the crew murmuring affirmations, oaths renewed in nods and grips. Lily yawned, leaning against Ethan's leg, her trust a quiet gift amid the chaos. Back on the bikes, The convoy pointed toward a roadside motel Marcus knew, its sign buzzing faintly in the distance. The wind picked up, carrying the faint howl of coyotes, as if the desert itself mourned the unfinished tale. Ethan revved his engine, the locket pressing against his heart like a beacon. He'd lost Sophia once to silence and shadows, but this time, with 50 brothers at his back and a child's hope riding pillion, he'd chased the truth to its end. The road unspooled before them, endless and unforgiving, but for the first time in years it felt like home, a path to redemption, paved with the weight of promises kept. As the motel lights grew closer, engines fading to a steady hum, Ethan whispered to the night, "I'm coming, Soph. For both of you." The stars above bore witness, silent sentinels to the vow taking shape in the dark. The motel's flickering sign buzzed like a trapped insect against the pre-dawn hush, its red glow pooling on the cracked parking lot where the convoy settled. Ethan eased his Harley to a stop near the office, the engine's final cough echoing off the stucco walls. Lily stirred behind him, her small body heavy with sleep, the stuffed rabbit wedged between them like a talisman. The air hung thick with the scent of damp earth and stale coffee from the diner's vents nearby, a far cry from the desert's raw bite. Marcus killed his bike beside them, swinging off with a nod to the others, 50 riders dispersing into the shadows, some claiming rooms, others standing watch like silent oaks in the wind. Inside the cramped lobby, the clerk, a wiry man with eyes like chipped flint, eyed the influx warily. But Ethan's quiet authority, backed by the club's unspoken presence, smoothed the transaction. 2 rooms, Ethan said, sliding cash across the scarred counter. 1 for the girl. Keep it simple, no questions. Lee, the clerk pocketed the bills without a word, handing over keys that jangled like loose chains. Lily clung to Ethan's hand as they climbed the exterior stairs, her sneakers scuffing the rusted metal. The room smelled of mildew and forgotten dreams, but the bed was clean, sheets crisp under the harsh fluorescent light. He tucked her in, the rabbit propped on the pillow, her eyelids fluttering as exhaustion claimed her. "Sleep now, Lily. We'll sort this at sunrise." She murmured something about the moon, her fingers brushing the bracelet he'd placed on the nightstand, its silver charm catching the lamp's glow. Ethan lingered in the doorway, the weight of the night pressing on his shoulders like an old rucksack. Down the balcony, the crew gathered in low voices, veterans sharing smokes, their faces etched with the same quiet fire that had drawn them to the Iron Vow years ago. It started as a pact among war brothers, oaths sworn in a VA hospital, promising to stand for the overlooked, the ones the system chewed up and spat out. No glory, just honor, riding for lost causes, mending what the world broke. Marcus joined him, leaning on the rail, the cherry of his cigarette painting arcs in the dark. "That bracelet, it's hers, isn't it? Sophia's." Ethan's nod was slow, the locket at his throat a cold anchor. "Yeah, and the kid's got her eyes. If she's tangled in whatever pulled that car off the road, we're knee-deep now." Marcus exhaled smoke toward the horizon, where the first blush of dawn bled into the sky. "Club's with you, brother. Vow's the vow." Sleep evaded Ethan in his room, the thin walls doing little to muffle the distant rumble of a semi on the highway. He sat by the window, staring at the bracelet, turning it over in calloused hands. Memories flooded unbidden. Sophia's touch in that motel years back, her breath warm against his neck as she fastened the matching lockets. "One for you, one for me," she'd said, her voice a melody against the storm outside. "So we'll always find our way back." But the war's shadows had followed him home, nights of rage, bottles shattered in fits of silence, and she'd slipped away, chasing her own ghosts in a life of fleeting jobs and hollow promises. He'd searched at first, pounding pavements from border towns to city underbellies, but the trails went cold. The locket became his burden, a reminder to keep moving, to honor the man he'd failed to be. A soft knock pulled him from the reverie. He opened the door to find a young rider, Jake, barely out of his 20s, with a fresh tattoo of the club's emblem curling up his arm. Perimeters clear. But I overheard the clerk on the phone mentioned a call about a blue sedan reported missing, said it came from Blackridge PD. Ethan's pulse quickened, the pieces slotting like gears in an old engine. Blackridge, a dusty crossroads town where the law bent for the highest bidder, whispers of a syndicate running shadows, smugglers who trafficked more than goods, vanishing the desperate into labor camps or worse. If Sophia had crossed them, seeking a fresh start with Lily, the accident wasn't chance. It was a warning. By dawn, the convoy stirred, engines coughing awake as the sun crested the hills, gilding the motel in golden haze. Lily emerged, bleary-eyed, rabbit in tow, her trust in Ethan blooming like a desert flower after rain. He knelt to her level. The scent of her shampoo, faint vanilla, cutting through the motorcycle oil on his skin. "We're heading to Blackridge today. Gonna ask around about your mom." She nodded solemnly, fingering the bracelet. "She said the moon would bring help, like you." The words twisted something deep, a vow forming unvoiced. He'd unearth the truth, not for vengeance, but for the redemption Sophia deserved, and the child who'd reignited his fractured soul. The ride to Blackridge unfolded under a relentless sky, the road winding through canyons where red rock walls rose like ancient guardians. Wind whipped at their formation, carrying the tang of sage and sun-baked stone. Ethan rode point, Lily secure in a sidecar rigged by the crew overnight, her laughter occasionally piercing the roar as she pointed at soaring hawks. The club stretched behind, a steel serpent undulating with purpose, leather creaking, exhaust trailing like battle smoke. Marcus scouted ahead on his scout bike, radio crackling updates. "Town's quiet, but eyes on us already. Sheriff's got a cruiser idling at the edge." Blackridge materialized like a mirage. Clapboard buildings sagging under the weight of time. A single main street flanked by a diner, a bar, and the squat police station. Dust devils danced in empty lots, and the air hummed with suspicion as the convoy rolled in, engines growling to a halt outside the station. Folks paused on porches, curtains twitching, the town's pulse quickening at the sight of outsiders bound by more than blood. Ethan dismounted, helping Lily down, her hand small in his. The sheriff emerged, badge glinting, his stance wide but eyes flickering with unease. "What brings the iron vow to our little corner?" he drawled, voice oily as the blacktop underfoot. Ethan met his gaze steadily, the locket hidden but burning against his chest. "A blue sedan went off the road last night. Girl's mother was in it." He nodded to Lily, who shrank slightly but held her ground. The sheriff's expression tightened, a shadow crossing his weathered face. "Accidents happen out here. Deserts unforgiving." But the lie hung thin, and as Ethan pressed, describing the bracelet, the tracks leading north, the man's hand twitched toward his radio. "We'll look into it," he said, too quickly turning away. It was enough. Marcus sidled up, murmuring, "He's hiding something." Saw him glance at the diner, owners connected to the ring. The crew fanned out subtly, blending into the street, some grabbing coffee, others chatting up locals, ears tuned to the undercurrents of fear and favor. Lily spotted a woman at the diner's window, her face pale, and tugged Ethan's sleeve. "That lady. She knows Mommy." The revelation sparked, pulling them toward the glass doors where the scent of frying bacon mingled with tension. Inside, the diner was a time capsule of vinyl booths and spinning fans, the air heavy with grease and unspoken secrets. The woman, mid-30s with Sophia's dark hair tied back, froze as they entered, her eyes widening at Lily. You're from the wreck." Ethan slid into a booth, Lily beside him, the crew taking positions at the counter. "Name's Ethan. This is Lily. Her mom's missing, Sophia. Wore a moon bracelet like this." He laid it on the table, the silver catching the light. The woman's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling. Sophia, she worked here last month, said she was running from trouble, debts, bad folks. Mentioned a biker ex with a matching locket. Then she vanished with the girl, heading south, but the sheriff, he's in their pocket. The confession spilled like a dam breaking, words tumbling amid the clink of silverware and the hum of the fridge. The syndicate had eyes everywhere, pressuring workers, silencing whispers. Sophia had crossed them, borrowing against promises she couldn't keep. And now the accident reeked of sabotage. Ethan's fists clenched under the table, the old war rage simmering, but he held it, focusing on the moral line, truth over fists, loyalty over chaos. Where'd they take her? The woman glanced at the door, voice dropping. Old mill north of town, but go careful, they're armed and the law looks away. As they stepped back into the sun, the convoy reassembling with purposeful murmurs, Ethan felt the vow solidify. Sophia wasn't just a ghost, she was alive, fighting shadows he'd once fled. With Lily's hand in his and brothers at his back, the ride to the mill loomed, a test of honor, where redemption waited in the dust and danger. The engines roared to life, Blackridge shrinking in the mirrors. The desert unfolding like a challenge, accepted. The sun climbed higher over Blackridge, turning the sky into a furnace of unrelenting blue as the Iron Vow riders thundered out of town toward the old mill. Dust billowed in their wake like a veil of secrets, the convoy's engines a relentless drumbeat against the parched earth. Ethan led the pack, his Harley cutting through the heat haze, Lily secure in the sidecar with her rabbit clutched tight. The bracelet dangled from the handlebar now, swaying like a pendulum marking the seconds to truth. Wind lashed at his face, carrying the dry rasp of sagebrush and the faint, acrid whisper of rust from abandoned structures ahead. Marcus rode close on his flank, radio clipped to his vest, crackling faintly. Scouts confirm, mill's a ghost town, but trucks parked out back. We're walking into the Viper's Nest. The road narrowed to a rutted track, flanked by crumbling adobe walls that whispered of forgotten booms and busts. Ethan's mind raced ahead, fragments of the past colliding with the present. Sophia's voice in the diner's dim light, her laugh echoing from motel nights long buried. The woman's words burned. Debts to the syndicate, a life on the run with a child in tow. If they'd targeted her car, it wasn't just bad luck. It was erasure, a silencing of loose ends. His grip tightened on the throttle, the locket pressing into his chest like a brand. He'd failed her once, letting the war's ghosts drive a wedge between them, but this vow, to Lily, to the memory of what they could have been, demanded he cross the line without becoming the monster he fought. The mill loomed into view, a skeletal relic of weathered timber and sagging silos against the horizon, its wheel long stilled by the dry riverbed it once fed. Chain-link fences sagged under vines, and the air thickened with the metallic tang of oil and decay. Ethan signaled a halt a quarter-mile out, the convoy fanning into a loose arc behind boulders for cover. Engines cut to whispers, leaving only the tick of cooling metal and the distant corps of ravens circling the rooftops. Lily peered up at him, her face smudged with road dust, eyes holding a quiet storm. Is Mommy in there, the bad place? He knelt, brushing a strand from her forehead, the gesture tender amid the tension. We're going to bring her out. Stay with Marcus. He's got stories to keep you safe. She nodded, small hand squeezing his, a pact sealed in silence. The core group, Ethan, Marcus, and a half-dozen trusted riders, advanced on foot, boots silent on the sun-baked ground, shadows stretching long as noon approached. They slipped through a gap in the fence, the wire snagging leather like greedy fingers. Inside, the yard was a maze of rusted machinery and stacked crates, the air humming with the low murmur of voices from a shadowed loading dock. Ethan crouched behind a derelict conveyor, peering through gaps. Three men in faded flannels, rifles slung casual over shoulders, passing a flask as they guarded a padlocked shed. Laughter barked out, coarse and careless, but undercut by the tension of watchmen knowing their ground was tainted. "They're moving product tonight," Marcus whispered, his breath hot against Ethan's ear. "Heard it on the radio chatter. Folks like Sophia get caught in the crossfire, forced labor or worse." The words landed like stones in still water, rippling Ethan's resolve. The syndicate's web stretched far. Smuggling routes veiled as legitimate hauls, preying on the desperate with false promises of work, only to chain them in the shadows. Sophia, with her fierce independence and a child to protect, would have fought it. Borrowed against illusions of escape, only to draw the noose tighter. Ethan's scars itched under his sleeves, reminders of battles where loyalty meant survival, not just for self, but for the brother at your side. Here it was the same, a family chosen in the crucible of need. They moved like ghosts, circling wide to the shed's rear. A loose board yielded to a rider's knife, the wood splintering softly. Inside, the dim space reeked of mildew and fear sweat, lit by a single hanging bulb that swung like a noose. Figures huddled in the gloom, 5, maybe 6. Gaunt faces turning toward the intrusion with wide-eyed caution. Chains rattled faintly from ankles bolted to the floor, not heavy irons, but enough to bind the spirit. And there, in the corner, sat Sophia, thinner than he remembered. Dark hair matted, but her eyes, those fierce, unyielding eyes, flashed recognition as Ethan stepped into the light. "Ethan!" Her voice cracked, a whisper laced with disbelief, and something sharper, like betrayal, long nursed. She shifted, chains clinking, revealing bruises blooming on her arms, marks of resistance, not defeat. Lily's mother, alive but caged, the woman who'd slipped the locket around his neck as a bridge across their fractures. The air between them thickened, heavy with unspoken years. His post-war silence, her desperate flights, the child born from a love that time couldn't fully erase. He knelt swiftly, gloved hands working the locks with tools from his vest, the metal clicking free one by one. "Soph, God," I thought. Words failed, choked by the lump in his throat. The others in the shed stirred, murmurs of hope threading the dark, workers from border towns, families shattered by the same deceit. Marcus kept watch at the door, signaling all clear, while the riders began ushering them out, quiet instructions cutting the tension. Sophia rose unsteadily, gripping his arm, her touch electric after the void. "Lily, she's with you? The wreck?" "They ran us off, said it was payback for the money I owed. I hid her, ran for help, but they caught me here." Ethan's jaw clenched, the moral fire igniting. No guns drawn yet. This was extraction, not war, honoring the vow to protect without descending into the syndicate's chaos. But as they emerged into the yard, a shout split the air. "Intruders!" The guards spun, rifles rising, the flask shattering on concrete. Chaos erupted, riders shouting diversions, engines revving from the perimeter as the convoy surged forward like a tide. Ethan shielded Sophia, pulling her toward the fence, her breath ragged against his back. A shot cracked wild and high, pinging off metal, but the iron vow held formation, a wall of leather and unyielding brotherhood. They broke for the bikes in a frantic dash, the freed captives scrambling onto spare rides. Hands linking in desperate chains. Sophia mounted behind Ethan, her arms wrapping his waist, familiar yet changed by time's cruel etchings. Lily's cry pierced from the sidecar as they reunited, mother and daughter clinging in a tear-streaked blur. "Mommy!" The word wove through the roar, a balm amid the fray, but the guards pursued in a battered truck, dust churning, headlights flaring like angry eyes in the afternoon glare. The chase ignited, engines screaming as the convoy tore back toward the highway, the mill shrinking in the mirrors. Bullets whined past, but the riders weaved with precision born of shared scars, evasive maneuvers honed on freer roads, now a shield for the vulnerable. Ethan's heart pounded, not from fear but from the redemption unfolding. Sophia's weight against him, Lily's laughter breaking through sobs, the club a thunderous guardian. Yet doubt lingered. What debts remained, what shadows would follow? The syndicate wouldn't fade quietly. This rescue was a spark, promising a larger fire. As Blackridge's outskirts blurred by, the truck faltered, engine smoking from a well-aimed distraction by Marcus. The convoy pressed on, veering toward a hidden safe house in the hills, the sun dipping low and casting long shadows of hope. Ethan glanced back, Sophia's eyes meeting his over Lily's head, gratitude, regret, and a flicker of the old promise. The road ahead twisted, fraught with trials, but for the first time it led not to ghosts but to mending. The locket warmed against his skin, a silent oath. They'd face the reckoning together, bound by loyalty that outlasted chains. If this tale of lost promises and unbreakable bonds is stirring something in you, drop a like below. It helps these stories reach more hearts in need of light. The safe house nestled in a fold of the hills like a secret carved from stone, its adobe walls blending with the rust-red earth under the fading sun. Ethan eased his Harley to a stop in the shadowed courtyard, the engine's growl dying to a sigh as dust settled around them. Sophia dismounted first, her legs unsteady from the chains and the chase, pulling Lily into a fierce embrace that spoke volumes in silence. The girl's sobs muffled against her mother's shoulder, the stuffed rabbit pressed between them like a forgotten witness. The convoy encircled the perimeter, riders dismounting with the quiet efficiency of men who'd turned hideouts into homes more than once. Scanning horizons, checking locks, their leather vests creaking softly in the cooling breeze. The air carried the sharp tang of pine from the higher slopes and the faint earthy musk of the day's heat lifting, a fragile peace after the mill's frenzy. Inside, the space was sparse but sturdy, a central room with worn wooden beams overhead, lit by lanterns that cast warm pools on the flagstone floor. A long table bore maps and canteens, remnants of past vigils, while cots lined the walls for the freed captives, now huddled in corners, murmuring gratitude or staring blankly at the walls. Ethan guided Sophia and Lily to a side alcove, the scent of sage tea brewing on a small stove wafting through. Marcus took point at the door, his silhouette framed against the twilight, rifle slung low but ready. "We'll hold here till nightfall," he said, voice gravelly with fatigue. "Scouts are out, syndicates scrambling, but they won't find us easy." Ethan nodded, the weight of the day settling in his bones like lead. Sophia sank onto a cot, Lily curling into her lap, the bracelet reclaimed and fastened around her wrist, its moon charm glinting faintly. Ethan's gaze lingered on them, the locket at his throat a twin echo, pulling at threads long frayed. 8 years since she'd vanished, nights he'd spent chasing shadows in border bars, the war's echoes drowning out her calls for the man he used to be. Post-traumatic storms had raged in him then, turning love to silence, promises to dust. She'd left with a note, "Find peace, Ethan. I can't wait forever." But here she was, etched by hardship, yet unbroken, her eyes holding the same fire that had drawn him in under neon lights and pouring rain. "You kept it," she said softly, reaching out to trace the locket's edge where it rested against his collarbone. Her fingers were cool, tentative, brushing skin that remembered her touch like a map half erased. He caught her hand gently, holding it there, the contact sparking memories. Stolen weekends on the road, her head on his chest as engines hummed lullabies. Never took it off. Thought it was all I had left of us. Lily watched them, thumb in mouth, her earlier terror softened by reunion, but questions flickered in her gaze, the innocent probe that had started it all. "Mommy, why'd the bad men take you? And how'd the biker man know the moon?" Sophia's laugh was a fragile thing, laced with tears she blinked away. "The moon's special, baby. It was our way of saying we'd always come back. She glanced at Ethan, the words bridging the chasm. I ran because I had to protect her. Debts piled up after you. After we ended, took odd jobs, but the syndicate, they promise work, then own you. Borrowed from the wrong hands, thinking I could pay with time. The car swerved because they forced it. Tires slashed on the highway. A message. I shoved Lily out, told her to run to the gas station. Thought I'd fight them off, but... Her voice trailed, shadows of the shed clinging to her words. Bruises shadowed her arms, faint suggestions of struggle, but her chin lifted with the defiance he'd always admired. Ethan knelt before them, the floor cool under his knees, his broad frame folding with the vulnerability of a man reclaiming lost ground. I should have looked harder. The war took pieces of me, made me forget how to hold on. But seeing Lily, hearing her ask about this... He tapped the locket, voice thickening. It broke something open. The iron vow, we ride for promises like that, oaths to stand when no one else will. The crew filtered in gradually, sharing water and quiet nods, their presence a tapestry of chosen bonds. Jake with his fresh ink, tending to a captive's scraped knee, others posting watches, eyes on the darkening hills. This was their creed. No blood ties, just loyalty forged in fire, from foxholes to freeways, honoring the overlooked against the world's grind. As night deepened, stars pricking the velvet sky like scattered diamonds, the safe house hummed with subdued life. Sophia recounted more in whispers over tea, the steam curling like ghosts, how she'd heard of Ethan's club through diner talk, a beacon for the lost. How Lily's questions about her daddy with the motorcycle had kept her stories alive. Ethan listened, the locket warming with each revelation, redemption seeping into cracks he'd sealed shut. But peace was fleeting. The radio crackled to life in Marcus's hand, a scout's voice cutting through. Trucks inbound, 3, maybe 4, heading straight for the hills. They've got the sheriff's markings. Tension rippled through the room like a stone in water, captives stirring with fear, riders rising as one. Ethan stood, resolve hardening his features, the moral compass steady. No blind rage. This was justice, poetic and measured, exposing corruption without mirroring it. Get the families mounted. We'll draw them off, lead them to the open road. Sophia gripped his arm, Lily clinging to her skirt. Ethan, don't. We've got her back. Let's just go. But his eyes met hers, the promise unspoken yet ironclad. Can't run forever, Soph. The syndicate ends tonight, or it follows us all. For Lily, for us. The convoy mobilized under the moon's pale watch. Engines murmuring awake like awakening beasts. Captives bundled onto spares, the weak supported by strong arms. A human chain of survival. Ethan helped Sophia and Lily to his bike, her body fitting against his back once more, an echo of roads long past. The locket swayed as he revved the throttle, the silver chain a lifeline. Marcus led the decoy flank, peeling off toward a ravine to lure the pursuers, while the main group veered east toward the highway's expanse. Headlights pierced the dark in pursuit, the syndicate's trucks growling like predators scenting blood, their beams slicing the night. The chase reignited, wind howling through canyons where rock faces loomed like silent judges. Bullets pinged off shields improvised from saddlebags. But the iron vow weaved with grace born of brotherhood, evasions tight and true, protecting the vulnerable without retaliation's cost. Ethan's mind raced with the stakes, not just escape, but dismantling the web, alerting allies in nearby towns to the sheriff's complicity. Sophia's arms tightened around him, her breath steady against chaos, whispering, "You came back. After all this time." The words fueled him, turning flight into purpose. As the hills gave way to flatland, the lead truck faltered. Marcus's trap sprung, boulders tumbling to block their path in a rumble of dust and defeat. The convoy pressed on, the threat splintering behind, but Ethan knew it wasn't over. Dawn would bring the reckoning, calls to honest lawmen, evidence from the shed to topple the corrupt. For now, the road stretched merciful, carrying them toward a fragile horizon, family reunited, vows fulfilled, the desert's vastness a canvas for healing. Lily's small voice rose over the roar. "The moon's watching, Daddy." The title hung, unclaimed yet fitting, as Ethan smiled into the wind, the locket's promise alive at last. The highway unspooled under the first hints of dawn, a silver thread weaving through the shadowed valleys where the night's fury had burned itself out. Ethan's Harley led the way, its engine a steady heartbeat against the chill wind that carried the faint scent of creosote and freedom. Sophia held tight behind him, her arms a bridge across the years, while Lily nestled in the sidecar, her small face turned upward to the paling sky, the stuffed rabbit peeking over the edge like a sentinel. The Iron Vow riders flanked them in a protective V. Headlights dimmed to ghosts in the twilight, their formation a testament to bonds forged not in blood, but in the quiet fire of shared oaths. Marcus rode rear guard, his scout bike weaving to check mirrors, the radio silent now that the syndicate's trucks lay tangled in the ravine, a barrier of stone and resolve that bought them time, if not peace. The pursuit had shattered like brittle glass under the club's calculated stand. No needless shots fired, just diversions and barriers that exposed the corruption without mirroring its rot. Word would spread. Scouts already relaying details to contacts in distant precincts, honest badgers who owed favors to the vow for past rides into the shadows. The sheriff's markings on those vehicles would unravel him, a thread pulled to expose the syndicate's grip on Blackridge. Ethan felt the weight of it all in his chest, lighter now, with Sophia's warmth against his back. But the road demanded vigilance. Her breath synced with the rhythm of the bike, a silent conversation after words had failed them so long ago. "You didn't have to come back," she murmured over the wind, her voice threading through the roar. "But you did. For her. For the promise." He glanced sidelong, the locket catching a stray beam from the rising sun, its crescent moon a beacon etched in silver. "Promises like that don't die, Soph. They wait." Lily's giggle bubbled up, cutting the tension like sunlight through clouds as she pointed to a flock of birds wheeling overhead. "Look, Mommy, the moon's hiding, but the birds know the way." The innocence in her words wove through them, a reminder of what they'd nearly lost, not just a life, but the fragile chance to rebuild it whole. The war had scarred Ethan deep, nights where silence swallowed screams, days where the world's indifference mirrored his own. But this child, with eyes that echoed Sophia's fire, had pulled him from the edge. Redemption wasn't a grand blaze. It was this, a family pieced together on the open road, held by loyalty that outlasted chains. They veered off the main artery toward a forgotten airstrip the club knew well. A relic from Boomtown days, where hangars sagged under vines and the tarmac cracked like old skin. The convoy rolled to a halt amid the hush, engines fading to ticks and sighs, the air thick with the oily scent of aged fuel and wild grasses pushing through concrete. Riders dismounted, forming a loose circle as the freed captives, shadows from the shed now stepping into light, stretched limbs unused to freedom. Whispers of thanks rippled among them, hands clasping shoulders in gestures of quiet solidarity. Marcus approached, wiping dust from his brow, his grizzled face softened by the dawn. "Radios buzzing. Federals are en route to Blackridge. Your evidence from the mill. It'll bury them. Clean, brother. No blood on our hands." Ethan nodded, swinging off his bike to help Sophia down. Her feet touched ground steadily now, the bruises fading marks of a fight won through truth, not force. Lily scampered out, wrapping arms around both their legs, a small whirlwind of energy amid the calm. The crew watched, their leather vests bearing the Iron Vow patch like badges of honor. Veterans, wanderers, souls who'd chosen family over solitude. Jake, the young rider, handed out water bottles, his fresh tattoo, a symbol of oaths yet to be tested fully. "We ride for this," he said to no one in particular, eyes on Lily. "The ones who can't ride alone." It was the creed that bound them. Justice not as vengeance, but as a steady light against the dark, honoring the overlooked in a world that too often turned away. Sophia pulled Ethan aside near a rusted hangar where the sun painted golden streaks on the walls. The locket hung between them, a shared talisman, pulling truths to the surface. "I kept running because I thought you'd moved on, found peace without the mess I became." Her fingers intertwined with his, calluses meeting in a grip that spoke of roads traveled apart. "But Lily, she asked about you every night. The man with the motorcycle, the one who'd keep us safe." Tears traced clean paths down her cheeks, mirroring the ones Ethan had shed at the gas station when her echo in the girl's question had cracked his armor. He cupped her face gently, thumb brushing away the salt, the desert wind stirring dust motes like confetti in their moment. "I was lost too, Soph. The club kept me riding straight, but you were the promise I couldn't let go. Seeing her, holding that bracelet, it was like you never left." Their foreheads touched, a quiet vow in the rising light as Lily tugged at their hands. "Can we go home now, with the bikers?" The question hung, simple and profound, defining home not as a place, but as this circle of chosen kin. Ethan lifted her onto his shoulders, her laughter ringing clear, while Sophia leaned into his side. The crew gathered loose, sharing nods and murmurs, oaths renewed without words, the iron vow stronger for the lives mended. Marcus fired up a grill from the airstrip stores, the sizzle of simple fare drawing them together, scents of char and spice mingling with the morning air. Stories flowed then, tales of past rides, losses turned to lessons, the moral weight of standing firm when the easy path called. As the sun crested fully, gilding the horizon in warm hues, a distant chopper's whir announced the Federal's arrival, justice rolling in on wings of accountability. The syndicate's web would fray, Blackridge's shadows pierced by light, earned through persistence, not power. Ethan watched Sophia braid Lily's hair, the moon charms on their wrists catching the rays, a pair complete at last. The road had led him here, not to vengeance, but to healing, a family reclaimed, promises kept in the quiet acts that echoed loudest. The engines would hum again soon, carrying them forward. But for now, in this interlude of dawn, the desert held its breath, witness to redemption's gentle triumph. The airstrip faded in the mirrors as the convoy reformed, pointing toward a horizon alive with possibility. Ethan rode with Sophia and Lily close, the locket a warm pulse against his heart, the iron vow a thunderous family at his back. Bonds like theirs didn't break. They bent, endured, and emerged stronger, legacy of honor in a cynical world. Thank you for riding this journey with us. If these stories of promises kept and families forged touch your soul, please subscribe for more tales that remind us of the light in the shadows.